Hello, and welcome to the channel, and welcome to the Central New York Large-Scale Railway Society's layout. Today's video will be the first one of three regarding the AML GP60 locomotive that was just put out into the market last year. This unit will be the Denver Rio Grande, and the first video will be showing the unboxing and a quick run around of the locomotive to look at the detail, and then running it with DC on the layout so you can get an idea of how the unit runs. The second video will be showing the installation of a Blunami DCC system, and then we'll have a third video showing that running on the layout with Blunami, either with battery or with track power, which it can do both, and that will conclude the video series. So let's get right to this. Let's get this open and see what it looks like. I've seen a few videos already. Colin Camarillo has had a couple of videos. Ted Doscaris has had a couple as well. Ted's videos did show the internal electronics that's in the engine. I guess the engine itself is wired polarity-wise in reverse of what we normally would see with any other locomotive from Bachmann or USA Train or even Aristocrat. And that's okay because it won't matter once we get the Blunami installed and running under DCC power. If it does run in the opposite direction of what we want it to, we can simply change that with the decoder. Inside the box is a pamphlet, illustration manual, and that has a breakdown of the parts lists, nice diagrams. Motor assemblies, motor block assemblies, again, component parts. Nothing that I can see, though, with regards to wiring diagrams for the electronics. So from what I've seen, the board that was developed, the main motherboard that was developed, was done with ESU, and therefore their decoders will plug right in. Anybody else's, like Soundtraxx here, will have to be wired in manually, but I guess from what I've seen, the units do have wire markers for each of the main processes within the engine, you know, rail pickups, motors, lights. There is no smoke unit with this particular unit. I will probably add one, probably an Aristocrat unit later on, and maybe I'll have a video on how that's done. But as you can see, it's packed pretty well with some pretty sturdy foam. And I can probably just lift this out now. There it is. Let's get rid of the outside box. And we'll unbox the engine. So from what I hear, this is how Accucraft does box most of their live steam and electric engines that they bring into the States. A slide out carton there, more foam packing. And from what I can see, there's a bag of parts on the side here taped into the box. Some handrails with some stickers. More component parts to go on the engine. Another bag. Brake hoses. let's see if we can get this out. Looks to be packed pretty well. One thing you want to make sure you don't do is throw away the styrofoam that has the side rails packed in. We'll have to take those out later and attach them. Here's the back piece of foam, nothing on that. And the end pieces, we'll take these out. Looks like the engine is packed on a piece of wood, and it is wrapped to that. That'll probably come in handy when I'm transporting the engine to the layout to run it. Got some straps here. Got to find the end of them. There it is. There's one. There's two. More tape. Again, they've got this packaged pretty well, hopefully to protect it against any damage during shipment. More tape on the back. More tissue paper. More pieces of foam. Yes, it's packed very well. And that's it. Very nice detail. Let's move this out of the way. Foam packing on the front to protect the rails so they don't get mashed, which can happen, I guess, during shipment. They're tight, so just be patient with them. They have knuckle couplers on the unit. And I know that Ted pointed out the fact that the side frames on the trucks may have been put on incorrectly, where there's a cable, I'm assuming that that's for speedometer, that's on here, and I guess in some cases this was assembled in reverse and was put on the rear truck on the right-hand side, on the fireman or on the engineer's side. But in this particular case, it is on correctly as it's on the fireman's side. One thing I do note is that there are no figures in the engine. That's too bad. The detail inside looks to be there. There's no painting details. Everything is a gray cast plastic part. And we'll see that in some more detail when I take some closer shots. It's got the snowplow in the front, the knuckle couplers. Nice detail. Fairly good weight. And I do find that here is, and I guess this has happened with every single one that's been shipped. One of the air hoses on the back is broken off. And so that will have to be glued back on. at some point. That's unfortunate. Now I guess on the top here is taken off very easily, and there's 4 magnets so that just sets back on. An improvement over what we saw with Aristocraft's units. One thing that I have seen, that this little nameplate is not glued down, or it's not something that is obviously stable with the unit, so you could actually lose that. I'll probably go in and put a couple of drops of glue in here, or hot glue, and mount that back down. But what you'll have here is a charging port. Not sure what style charger, that charging cable that'll take. For the most part, I don't put the batteries in the engines. I usually run them off a trailing car anyway, so that might not come into play. There are 2 switches on here, one for battery charge and battery run. So if you are running battery, you can turn it off and on from here. And then a rail and a battery switch. So this is just like the track battery switches you would see in the old Aristocraft units. So that'll be good too. It does have a beacon. Not sure if that's something that does work or not. It looks to be painted to me. If that's the case, I will look at that and see if I can put an actual LED, flashing LED in there. That will make it look nice. So let's get a closer look at the engine and go around it once, and then we'll stick it on the layout and see how it runs. So upon taking all of the parts out of their little bags and opening up the diagram booklet that was provided with the engine, I've seen that all of these parts come very nicely packaged. Most of them are die-cast parts or metal. And it comes with extra screws, and it indicates, by looking at the pack here, it indicates what section, what number and what quantity is in each bag, so you can match those up with the position here on the parts drawing, and it gives you that detail listing right down in here too as well. So the handrails are out, all the parts are listed out here. So now I'm going to take a few minutes and try to put these on. This one, I'm not sure why they did it that way. There's obviously there's 2 of these that go on, one on the front, one on the back, and obviously the one must have been installed with the engine, because I didn't find any extra bags without any parts in it, and it's broken. So I'm going to have to see if I can glue this in at some point. But there's another one here for the front as well. So we'll get these installed, except for this one hose here, and I know that there are also pieces of foam under the trucks, or actually on top of the trucks, right there, to keep that from causing any problems during shipping. So I'll remove those 2 from the engine. And again, in looking at the engine itself, from the back side here, it looks pretty nice. You got your metal grab irons. Boy, they look really nice and fine as well. Your headlight, your fans. On top, there appears to be some actual fans in there, metal fans. It's hard to tell because everything is black, but yeah, you can see them. Looks really nice. And again, here's the vent for the fan, for the smoke unit, which there is not one supplied with the engine. I'll have to put one on later. You got a nice details here. I guess this is where your antenna array would be, underneath that protection on the engine. Here's the front of the cab. I don't see any. Well, there is some plastic rub marks there on the cab. That's probably inevitable. I'll have to see if I can rub those out. It's got the ditch lights. I'll see if I can get the ditch lights to work normal, in other words, flashing independently or not. And again, you got your snow plow. But everything appears to be nice on the fireman side here. Let's take a look at the engineer side. So again, looking from the front this time, pretty much the same as the opposite side. Marker lights, headlights, horn, cab looks nice. You can see, hopefully, looking inside here, there is a fair amount of detail. No engineer or fireman. I'll have to see if I can get a couple to put in there. The windows do move. I'm hoping that there is cab lighting. Looks like there is. Yep, there's cab lighting in there too. You got your fuel tank. Trucks look nice. And again, there's the back of the locomotive. I may replace those couplers, depending upon how they work, either with Aristocraft couplers, which I do like, or some KDs, one or the other. But all in all, pretty nice. Let's get the other parts put on, and then we'll get a couple of shots with all the railings and parts on. Okay, so I have most of the detail parts put on. I did save the air hoses. I'll put those on later. They might need a little bit of glue, so I'll do that when I get the unit home. The one thing I noticed when putting on the railings is that the side, or the part of the railing that connects into the cab, and this is on both sides, were not formed. They were not formed to put right into the hole that they would normally have to go into. So that means that the owner, the consumer, myself, will have to go in and bend these, probably cut them off and bend them to go in. That's not good. I know that these are painted. I'll really have to watch what I do to make sure that they're bent without ruining the paint. But that's something that should be coming from the factory, already formed and ready to go in. The actual portions that go into the bottom portion, the sill portion of the engine, they're fairly loose. I mean, they go in. There's not a lot of friction there to hold them in. Obviously, once you get that bent and put into the cab frame, it should hold a lot better. But what I'll probably end up doing is putting a little spot of glue on these at some point, just to make sure that they hold up okay. So that's a little bit of a disappointment. The brake wheel looks nice. Looking at the, you got diamond plate tread on the walkways, the steps. Very nice. So good detail there. And again, most of this, even the side windows here. Obviously, these are die cast, so it's a solid piece of metal. They're not glass, which would have been a better touch to have a little bit of glass in here, or plastic, instead of a solid piece of metal. The actual sunshade is a die cast piece, nice, fits in there with a slot, so that should be good. They shouldn't break off like the old Aristocraft or the new Bachmann ones do. So that all looked pretty good. I did take the foam out from where the trucks meet the frame, so that will allow them to run properly once we get those on the layout. But you can see that looks pretty good. Very pleased. There's no number boards on the back of this engine like on the Jeep 40 that I have, which this will run with. That's why I got the Denver Rio Grande, or the Rio Grande, is to run this with my Jeep 40, the Aristocraft that I do have. One thing I'll have to take a look at when I look up the prototype online is to see if there was any kind of a drop step in here or not. A step plate, which normally with diesels they have them, so I'm not sure if this one didn't come with them, or it was just something that they didn't design to put in. I'll have to take a look at that. Here's the opposite side. Again, the trucks are nicely detailed. I heard that they're not really sprung like the Aristocraft, where they would rock a little bit. So if you have a little bit of an uneven track, which most of us probably do, especially outside, it may not track quite as well. If your track continuity is an issue, if you're not running battery probably won't be a problem. But if you're running with DCC or DC power, you might lose a little bit of pickup power if the axles are not rocking with the track, and they're kind of sticking up in the air a little bit as they go around the track. So be aware of that. Again, you know, nice looking. I'm going to now flip this over, and I'm going to take the bottom plates off the trucks, and I'm going to grease and oil these things just to make sure. Not that I don't trust the factory, but we'll want to make sure that everything is lubed up and greased up before I put this on the track. So here's the rear truck opened up. There's 6 screws that hold the plate, cover plate down on the unit. Again, you'll note that these, looks like the power pickups are basically from, you know, wipers that pick up on the axles on the bushings here. So they go back to the contacts here, the brass contacts which power the motor. I mean, there is grease on it. I will do some oiling right up on the ends of the axles here. I'll do some oiling here and maybe put a drop or two of LGB grease on these axles. I can't really tell if these are plastic or metal. I can see the worm gear down there off the motor, so it's a good size motor, just like a USA or Aristocrat or Bachmann. So let's oil and grease these up a little bit more, and we'll get this on the track to see how it runs. Oh, and one other point, I noticed too that there's no battery hookup cables to this, either on the back or the front. So when I get this apart to hook up my Blunami, I'm going to have to include a couple of cables leading off the back of the truck and the front so that I can hook up battery to this in a trailing car. That would be something that, you know, if there's future runs for these engines, they should probably take a look at doing that. That does come in handy, even if you're trying to multiple unit the product or the engine with another one. It comes in handy to do that. So I'll end up putting in a couple of those if I can, but I'll do that once I get the engine apart and scope it out for the Blunami. Okay, so let's do a little tryout on the layout. Obviously only running on DC power at this point. So let's turn the power up. Power up to about 60%. Running it with a 24-volt power supply. I did note a little hesitation running over the switches a little bit. Headlight, ditch lights, pretty light. Cab light, obviously it's on. Everything appears to be cool, you know, cool bright lights. I was expecting warm colored LED lighting. I may need to change that out. I don't really like that lighting pattern with the cool lights. And there, it just ran across that switch. Okay, let's try it in reverse now. does run quiet. You do hear it going through the switches, though. It kind of does make some noises. I'm not sure if it's because the flanges may be a little bit too or too shallow, maybe not quite as deep as normal, but you know, obviously with Aristocraft switches, which is what we have here, the frogs do tend to cause problems with some engines. First impressions are, you know, I like the looks of the engine. You know, it's pretty sturdy. A lot of die-cast metal here. The only thing I really a little disappointed in is the lighting. I would have gone with a warm white lighting on the lights that are here, the cab light, the ditch lights, the marker lights, and the headlight and rear light. I might either have to get used to it or see if I can change those out. When I get this engine apart, that'll tell me how easy or difficult that will be. You know, whether or not these units should come with a walkway plate here on the end and the front of the locomotive, I don't know. I'll have to double check that. I'm assuming it does. Now, whether or not that got missed in design or not, I don't know. You know, on the top of the engine, you've got all of the lift rings. They look nice. The fans look great. Like I said, I'll have to put a smoke unit in it because it doesn't come with one, and that's too bad. I would have assumed that it should. It does have a built-in speaker, so that's good. I did notice there was no blinking light here with the beacon. I'm going to add one. I have a blinking LED at home. I'll add that. I like the fact that, you know, the sunshades are all metal, so they're not going to break off like the ones on my Dash 9s did. The only thing I really don't like is that these handrails, I've got to bend them myself to get them to go into the cab on both sides of the cab. So hopefully I can do that without causing too much problem with the paint job. I'll probably have to just tape them up and then bend them and see if I can get them to go in. Hopefully I can. Overall, the engine, it's a good engine. Hopefully it'll be a good runner for me. The next step is to hook up Blunami. So that'll be the next video. Stay tuned for that. That should follow in the next few days. Thank you, and I appreciate the time today, and hope you enjoyed the video.